So the episode opens in 1962 during Operation Hourglass in Axis Mundi. Shaw is completely alone, and things are looking bleak. He's buried his comrades, he's out of food rations, and at this point, he's basically just trying to survive long enough for somebody, anybody, to hear him. Then the episode hits us with a really awesome reveal. Shaw wakes up to his signal finally being picked up through the rift. Except what he's hearing isn't mission control in the normal sense. He's hearing voices from the future, his own voice and Suzuki's voice. But of course, past Shaw has no idea who the hell these people are. And then it cuts back to where we left off in the last episode. Present Shaw and Suzuki realizing they're hearing Shaw's original distress call from 1962. Now I'm not gonna lie, I was so pissed in my last review about the total lack of monster action that I kind of underplayed how good this reveal actually was. Because that cliffhanger was kind of a banger. It's super meta, it's super weird, and it probably falls apart if you stare at the logic too long, but it's awesome. And more importantly, it immediately gives the episode a sense of purpose. Now we're not just wandering around with a vague mystery, now we've got a mission: get Shaw out. Suzuki gives us the standard sci-fi justification for why this is even possible. Time works differently in Axis Mundi. The rift is catching the original hourglass frequency, blah blah blah. You know, Doctor Who rules. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend it makes perfect sense. It doesn't, but it's cool enough that I can roll with it. Suzuki encourages Shaw to talk to his past self, and specifically to tell him what he most needed to hear. And right away, you can feel how weird and loaded this is for Shaw. Because he's not just talking to some random younger version of himself, which is weird enough. He's talking to himself at one of the lowest and most desperate moments of his life. Past Shaw asked to speak with Bill Randa, and you can already feel present Shaw having to tiptoe around everything. Because he can't just tell him the truth, he can't explain who he is, he can't explain what happens to him. So instead, he tells him Bill is separately trying to re-establish connection, basically just giving him enough to keep him steady without saying too much. Past Shaw, understandably, wants to know the main thing anybody in this situation would want to know. Is there a plan to get me out? And present Shaw promises him there is. Then the episode shifts over to Kate and Keiko. Keiko has discovered that the sonic frequency Kate is hearing is actually real. She ties it back to Japanese yokai legends and shows images of women who supposedly heard the same sound. Bill had speculated that the so-called yokai was actually Titan X's call, and that maybe those women understood on some level what the message was trying to say. That's a cool enough idea, I guess. But then the storyline hits a weird point that I just don't buy. Keiko starts acting like they need to find Titan X before Shaw destroys it, and I'm kinda sitting there like, when did Shaw ever say that was the plan? At no point does it really feel like Shaw is trying to just straight up destroy the Titan. So this whole bit of tension feels manufactured, like the episode needed conflict here and just kind of forced it in. And during this conversation, Kate says,
maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just feeling these vibrations and interpreting it as loss. Maybe I'm just lost and I'm projecting.
And honestly, truer words have never been spoken. That might be the most self-aware thing this character has said all season. Then we move over to Kentaro apologizing to Mei.
Brother, who cares? Who cares, brother? Who cares, brother? Who cares? Today,
because I really do not care about this. It's just more relationship bullshit with no value to it. Doesn't feel important, and compared to what's happening with Shaw, this is just lame. Present Shaw and Suzuki re-establish contact with past Shaw and start trying to think through the mission more practically. But during this, they realize something important. Godzilla wasn't there back in 1962. So the answer isn't Godzilla, the answer is Titan X. So then it's decided, Shaw will put the tracker on Titan X. And this is where that conversation really starts becoming interesting. Because now past Shaw is no longer just scared and desperate, now he's suspicious. He's listening carefully, he's realizing these people know way too much. And his questions start becoming sharper. Why this Titan? Why this plan? Why do you know so much about what's down here? Why should I trust any of this? Those are all fair questions. Because from his perspective, this is insane. Some unknown voice is contacting him across time and space. telling him to go tag a Titan as part of his rescue plan. I'd be pretty skeptical too. Past Shaw keeps pressing the issue, and present Shaw has to keep bullshitting just enough to move the mission along without blowing up the whole thing. We then shift briefly to Tim and May on a Monarch vessel. Tim is still one of the only people in the modern storyline who feels like he's actually standing on business. He calls May out, he holds her accountable. Or so I thought. Tim then starts talking about Titan X being on a rampage. And I'm like, what rampage? We haven't seen a real rampage of any kind. That's still one of the show's biggest problems. It keeps talking like we're getting all this Titan chaos, when most of it is implied instead of shown. But from here on out, the episode really belongs to Shaw. As the conversation continues, Past Shaw starts asking more personal questions. And this is where it stops just being about mission logistics and starts becoming something deeper. He can hear something familiar in the other voice. He doesn't know what it is yet, but he knows this isn't normal, so he slowly starts probing. Present Shaw keeps dodging as best as he can, while Suzuki tries to smooth things over, but the mask is starting to slip. Past Shaw also brings up Hiroshi. He talks about this little boy up there that he loves and promised he'd come back to. Past Shaw comes across Keiko's encampment. And that's the point where the episode stops being just interesting and becomes genuinely emotional. Because present Shaw knows exactly what this moment is. He knows what his younger self is seeing, and he knows what he's about to want. And he also knows how dangerous that is. Past Shaw wants to go to her. Of course he does. Why wouldn't he? As far as he knows, Keiko might be alive. And younger Shaw still lives in the part of the story where maybe it doesn't all have to end in pain. Present Shaw, meanwhile, is carrying all the memory. So now the conversation shifts again. It's no longer, how do I complete this mission? Now it's, do I go after the person I love? And that's where the writing really starts cooking. That line coming back here is heavy. Because now it's no longer some distant romantic idea. Now it's the exact emotional knife twisting in both versions of Shaw at the same time. And for a brief moment, even present Shaw starts to crack. He wonders what happens if he changes it. You can see it in him. What if this is the moment to fix everything? What if it doesn't have to end the way it did? But Suzuki brings him back. And thank God he does. Because then we get the best moment of this episode. Past Shaw asks for one good reason not to go to Keiko. And present Shaw gives him 3. He tells himself that Keiko doesn't need saving in this moment. He says changing this could erase the kids that came after, Hiroshi's kids, the life that exists because of what happened. But honestly, Shaw, you know what I think? Man, fuck them kids. And then comes the last reason, the real reason, the one that matters most to him in this moment. I genuinely teared up at that line, because that's the entire tragedy of Shaw in one sentence. That's the moment where love becomes memory, where possibility becomes loss, where you accept that no matter how deeply you loved someone, no matter how real it was, no matter how much of yourself is tied to them, you still have to let them go. And that is such a human thing, so relatable, so painful, and just so real. Past Shaw stands there, watching Keiko from a distance, not saving her, not going to her, not changing anything, just letting that moment pass, accepting his destiny. And that right there is the emotional crescendo of the episode. Everything else is secondary. We get more Kate and Keiko stuff. Kate falls in the well, hears Titan X clearer, whatever. Tim and May figure out the device manipulates Titan nervous system signals. Kentaro and Isabella continue their storyline, which still just feels like filler. None of it comes close to the Shaw material. Eventually we return to the mission. Past Shaw tracks down Titan X, runs into a couple creatures along the way, nothing too major, and he successfully plants the tracker. And of course he barely escapes getting crushed in the process. Present Shaw then tells him how to get out and guides him towards the next step. And before the signal starts to fade, they get one last moment together. It's actually kinda sweet. Older Shaw, younger Shaw, one man split across time, helping himself survive. Back in the present, Shaw decides he's going in alone, and you can tell he doesn't expect to come back. He tells Suzuki goodbye, a real goodbye. Then Monarch finally picks up the signal from Titan X, and that's where this episode ends. Everything with Shaw and Suzuki guiding Past Shaw through Axis Mundi is by far the best part of this episode. It's the only plotline that truly feels like it matters. It's emotional, it's intriguing, and it uses all the weird sci-fi nonsense in a way that actually serves the character. I love the dynamic of Shaw talking to himself, knowing everything, but not being able to say it directly. And I especially love that older Shaw ends up guiding younger Shaw, not just through the mission, but through grief, through regret, through letting go. That's a very powerful thing to be able to learn. Outside of that, a lot of the other storylines still just don't hit for me. Kate, Kentaro, and Isabella, they aren't just filler, they're worthless. Get rid of these characters already. They don't feel important enough to justify how much time they keep talking. Tim and May have a little bit more potential, but even that still hasn't fully grabbed me. And of course, the monster action problem is still there. So yeah, if you really stop and think too hard about the Axis Mundi time communication stuff, it makes absolutely no sense. But whatever, it's fun sci-fi, I can get over that. Next episode. Episode 8. And at this point, I'm not even asking for a lot anymore. Just give me something that actually matters. Give me some Titan action. We open with Shaw hauling ass through the Australian desert. And immediately, this is kind of what we want more of. He finds Titan X thrashing in the sand, what looks like its nest. Oh wow, is the Titan going to drive the story this episode? But no, cut to Monarch. Their solution? Nuke it, of course. One guy says that's a terrible idea and gets shut down instantly. And now they're evacuating a 300-mile radius. Because in a show about Titans, humans are still the dumbest thing in it. We switch to Kate, Keiko, and Tim trying to convince Monarch that Kate has some psychic connection to Titan X. Yeah, we're still doing this. Keiko explains Shaw's plan, using radiation to lure another Titan. And I'm sitting there like, oh wow. Wow! In a Kaiju show? We might actually get a Kaiju fight? Fucking crazy. Back to Shaw setting up the device, actually moving the plot forward. Meanwhile, Monarch's scrambling and Tim drops the only line of logic in the room. Monarch's job is to find improbable solutions to impossible problems. We get more May and Kentaro drama. Still don't give a fuck show. Kate and the team fly toward Titan X. Immediately get swarmed and start going down. And I'm not even gonna lie, if they all died right now, this show might improve. And I would celebrate the death of these useless trash characters. Please give me something, show. Then, finally, Godzilla wakes up. There it is. That's what we've been waiting for. But no, back at the crash, Shaw finds them. And immediately you can feel the problem. Shaw is using logic. Everyone else is using feelings. Ah, a classic battle to be had. Keiko wants to save the Titan, and Shaw reminds them, this thing killed Hiroshi. They are in danger. And this plan was supposed to be simple. Him, Titan X, and Godzilla. That's it. He asks for one real reason their plan makes sense. And they don't have one. Not one. Meanwhile, Godzilla is getting closer. And for the first time all episode, or maybe all season, I'm really excited. Kate walks up to Titan X like she's invincible, and somehow doesn't die. Ah yes, plot armor at its finest, of course. They tease something interesting with Apex for a whole 2 seconds, and they don't do anything with it. And then, finally, Godzilla arrives. Can he save the episode? Godzilla pulls up like the king he is. Immediate presence, tail swipe, atomic breath, just pure dominance. At the same time, Apex steals the egg. Kate freaks out, and I still don't care. The fight, unfortunately, is short. But at this point, at least it exists, I suppose. Shaw and Tim are carrying this entire show. Everything with Shaw, the plan, the execution, the logic, that's the only part that feels important. Everything else, Kate, Keiko, Kentaro, either boring, frustrating, or pointless. We finally get Titan action, but it's still not enough. I'm frustrated, still watching, but barely. 8 episodes in, guys, and do I even have to say it anymore? From a Godzilla or Kaiju fan's perspective, this show is a massive disappointment. And I say that because apparently this is one of the top performing shows in the entire world currently. And I'm just not sure who the fuck is watching this show besides Godzilla and Kaiju fans. So it's odd to me that it is doing so well, because All of the fans are extremely disappointed. So perhaps the show was an effort to get the mainstream to watch the show. But again, when I ask around, I don't know anybody who's watching Monarch Legacy of Monsters. So how is the show doing so well? And the most disappointing part about that is because it is doing so well, they're going to continue to make it the same way they are now. This is barely a kaiju show. It's just drama and bullshit. It's not what it advertises itself to be, which is the biggest crime that it commits. And fun fact, this is the first video on Kaiju Senki that I didn't edit myself. I was helped by my good friend Dylan. And Dylan, jumping in at season 2, episode 7, was raging at how shit the show was, and even asked me over the phone, I thought this was a monster show. And that's exactly it. Even somebody who's not a massive fan of Godzilla or kaijus realizes that this show misrepresents what it's trying to do. Anyways, if you've made it this far into the video, please consider liking and subscribing to Kaiju Senki to join us for more reviews and something that I enjoy way more, which is our Godzilla Island review and retrospectives. We have a lot of fun on those. We joke a lot more. We make up bullshit. We be absurd. So my final thoughts, I hope episode 9 and 10 have something to offer in terms of a long kaiju battle of some sorts. Give me 10 to 15 minutes of Godzilla action in each episode, and I think that would be a little bit better. I hope we get something big. Make this suffering worth it for me in some fucking way, because at this point I've doubled down. We've only got 2 episodes to go, and no matter how much bullshit this show is throwing at me, I'm gonna see it through. Maybe I'm part of the problem because I'm contributing to the views of this fucking shit show. But anyway, thank you, and we'll see you next time.